Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on a Saturday afternoon. And this is the last panel for this venue, for the Cyprus Forum. And today we will be discussing about artificial intelligence, friend or foe. Even during our coordination meeting, we had some debate about the title itself, but let's first dive into the basics and then get into the actual questions. We are joined today by Dr. Constantine Dovrolis, Dr. Jahna Otterbacher, and Dr. Loizos. I will let them briefly introduce themselves, a little bit about your background and how you're related to artificial intelligence before we get into the questions. Dr. Jahna, do you want to go first?
Sure. Is this on?
Yes.
It is. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for sticking it out to the end. So I'm Jahna. I finished my PhD many moons ago in 2006 at the University of Michigan in the United States. I did my PhD in the area of ranking algorithms for information retrieval, so algorithms that rank documents that we want to retrieve, algorithms also that recognize paraphrases, so when we say essentially the same thing in two different ways. So that was before the age of deep learning, right? Now we're in a very different phase of the development of artificial intelligence, as I'm sure all of you are very aware. These days I have shifted my research to the question of social and ethical issues that come up surrounding artificial intelligence and trying to help people to have better relationships with the AI tools that they use. So here in Cyprus, I wear two hats. I am an associate professor at the Open University of Cyprus, where I lead the Cyprus Center for Algorithmic Transparency. Our research there is more focused on basic research as well as educational outreach. So I'm really excited. We're getting ready to run for the third time a course called AI in Everyday Life, Τεχνητή νοημοσύνη στην καθημερινή ζωή. It's a 10-week course which is designed for anyone. It assumes no technical background, so that's kind of my passion project at the moment and relates to transparency because I want the public to be able to understand what's going on. I've been talking too long, I realize that. My second hat is at the CYENS Center of Excellence, where obviously our research there is more of an applied nature, so we are trying to actually build tools to do primarily two things. One, to educate people about AI applications again, and second of all, to help developers audit the types of data sets and algorithms that they want to embed into their own creations. Thank you.
Loizos, do you want to go next?
Yes. Hello, everyone. So my name is Loizos. I hold a PhD from Harvard University. I came back to Cyprus soon after that. I'm also at the Open University of Cyprus and the Science Center of Excellence. My research has to do with computational cognition, meaning how do we computationally model the cognitive process in the human mind, mostly focusing on learning and reasoning. I started early on my research on the reasoning part. How do we formally reason? How do we reason with common sense knowledge? And then during my PhD, I also found out that you can combine learning, you should combine learning with reasoning actually to build intelligent machines. And I have been working on the theory of learning and reasoning since then, while also at the Science Center trying to build socially competent AI technologies, focusing on the production of cognitive assistants that can help take some of the cognitive load of humans and help them in everyday tasks. Thank you.
And Constantine.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Constantine. So I am a professor at the Cyprus Institute, also a director of the computation-based Science and Technology Research Center. I came to Cyprus a couple of years ago from the US. I was a professor at Georgia Tech there for many years. And I work in machine learning, artificial intelligence. I'm very interested in how it relates to the brain. And so we're interested in neuro-inspired artificial intelligence. Actually, to be honest with you, the main reason I study AI is because I believe that if we build AI, then we will figure out how the brain and the human mind is different than AI. Of course, it's different, right? But if you manage to build an artifact that can think, then you can ask, okay, which are the things that this artifact cannot do, but the human mind can do? And so my hope is that this research will eventually give us a lot of information about the human mind as well. Let me stop here, yeah.
Okay. So in recent decades, we have some major technological innovations. How is AI different than other innovations that we have seen so far? Constantine, you want to go first?
Yeah. So there are many things that make the current wave of AI different. In my opinion, the main one is language, right? What distinguishes us from other species is that we can think in terms of language. We can produce language, we can communicate with each other, right? And what happens now with AI is that it seems through these large language models that it can actually understand language and it can produce language, right? And this is a breakthrough. I mean, no matter how you define the word breakthrough, we have another species, I mean, it's not a biological species, that can communicate through language. And so it can, traditionally, whenever we wanted to communicate with computers, we had to write code. Now we can communicate with a computer through language. Imagine everything that can be done. I think the opportunities are endless. The applications are endless. Yeah, let me stop here.
Okay. Someone who wants to add to this?
Yeah, so I would like to comment on the difference between AI and other technologies as opposed to earlier versions of AI. I mean, we have seen other disrupting technologies, nuclear power, or even the advent of fire was, in a sense, a disruption. What is different now is the uncertainty that comes with AI, because we don't have full control of what AI does. So unlike earlier technologies where everything was designed and we knew precisely what the machine will do or the reaction would do in a chemical reaction for the nuclear bomb, let's say, now we build machines that go out, read by themselves, study by themselves, train themselves, and come back, and we don't know what they will produce. So I think this uncertainty is perhaps causing extra anxiety about what AI can or cannot do.
Can I add something very quickly?
Yes.
What I wanted to mention here is the rate at which AI or AI technologies, because it's different, AI as a science versus AI technologies or applications, are being democratized and uptake by the public very rapidly. And they're embedded into our lives in ways that we don't always see. They've become, anyone who has a smartphone is interacting with a number of different algorithms on a daily basis, and many people are totally unaware of that. So on the one hand, we have uncertainty, we have human likeness, because there's something very human about being able to communicate in natural language. The other thing that I want to mention and just to say that, previously other innovations like an elevator, even an operating system on your computer, it's always very obvious when you're interacting with those technologies, but not with AI technologies always. The other thing, yes, a lot of people, I'm afraid, also don't understand that they play a role in this whole ecosystem with their data, right? So think of how much data we contribute to Google, Meta, and other proprietary technologies that we use every day. I think many people don't realize that we are all a part of this ecosystem.
That kind of links to the second question, which artificial intelligence has been met with a lot of excitement, but also a lot of skepticism. So can we talk a bit about what are the concerns or problems, what can go wrong, but also what could go right with artificial intelligence? Who wants to go first? Constantine?
I mean, there are so many things that can go right, but also wrong, right? So maybe we should start from the positives, right? I envision a near future, not a distant future, where the education of our children will be much, much better, because every child will have an individual tutor, an AI tutor, right? So this tutor will be monitoring the progress of your child in every subject, producing exercises and help customized for that child, right? So, I mean, studies have shown that whenever we give students a tutor, a human tutor, it always improves the performance of the student. So if we can do this now for every student, because it will be much cheaper if we do it with AI, it can have a major effect on education. And of course, education then affects everything else in life. So, and this is only one subject. We can talk about health, we can talk about many other things. Now, negatives, I mean, of course, it's going to be, for a short period of time, I believe, it will get really ugly out there. It will become a jungle of misinformation and all kinds of cheating, right? So you will be getting a phone call, and it may sound like the voice of your mother or the voice of your friend, and it will not be your friend. It will be an AI that basically impersonates your friend, right? And that friend can ask you for money. So I do expect that there will be a time period, as it usually happens with technologies, where the bad guys move faster than the good guys. They will try, of course, you know, to influence people, monetize, you know, all of these things. So I expect, however, and we can talk about that later, that then with the appropriate research as well as regulation as well as interventions, things will get better, right? So we experienced, in some sense, if I may add one more thing, if you remember, those of you that are a bit older, in around 2000, right, the music industry suffered from all the stealing of music, right? Everybody was copying CDs and selling them illegally, right? And movies as well. And then we had some regulation, we had some technological interventions, and things became better. The whole industry changed. I do expect that we may see similar things with AI, but we can talk about that later.
Jahna, you want to go next?
Sure. So in order for things to go well, what we need is for the general public to have an appropriate level of trust in these technologies. So there are a lot of really interesting theories that emerged in the 1970s out of ergonomics, if I'm not mistaken, stating that, you know, you don't want people to overtrust these technologies because, as Loizos mentioned, there is a lot of uncertainty surrounding how they work. You don't want people to overtrust, because then if an error happens, if something undesirable happens, you know, we're not in a position to catch it. But you also don't want people to undertrust these technologies, because then they don't take full advantage of them. So it's a matter of striking the right balance between those two. Yeah, maybe I can stop here.
Yeah. So I would like to point to another dimension that has been kind of an argument going on for like 20 years now. If things go wrong, we can just pull the plug, right, and turn things off. And this was already not an option 20 years ago. I was at a panel at the major AI conference in 1995, and the panel was discussing exactly the dangers of AI back then, right? And one of the panelists said, it's already too late. We already have software systems on the internet that are beyond our control. We cannot turn them off. They are living on the internet and propagating. Viruses was the case back then, right? So AI is here to stay, like it or not. We cannot turn it off. So we need to find a way to cope with it. And Jahna said that, you know, trusting to the right extent is what we need to do to cope with AI.
One of the concerns is about labor and about jobs being about vanishing. Do you have input on that? I mean, there was the same concern with computers and the internet. A lot of jobs disappeared or changed. Will AI bring a similar effect or something more serious? Who wants to go?
Well, I think that's always been the case with any form of automation. It might be in the extreme form with AI, as we're being told, but there's really only one solution, and that is to have a culture of lifelong learning. Unfortunately, I don't think there's really any other long-term solution. We need to get into the spirit of keeping up with things and being positive about these technologies. It's here to stay. They're here to stay, as Loizos said, and learn how to use them in a way that works for us. Learn how to work them into our routines so that we can benefit from them.
Just to add a bit on that, we shouldn't be thinking that we need to get to university to start thinking about AI. I think like 6-year-olds are smart enough to start being aware of what AI is. Maybe not the technical details because they cannot understand. Most of us cannot understand the technical details of AI. So when you go to elementary school, you might as well start talking to kids about, algorithms and that they operate in some certain way, that you need to trust them but not too much. They can be unpredictable. You can get some advice from them, but it's not your parents. They might not want what is best for you. So I think starting very early on, talking about these things is the best way to get to a society that can get the benefits but not risk the dangers from AI.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not so worried about that. I mean, I think what you will see is that AI helps people across many different professions to become more productive. And you will see this with both white-collar jobs and blue-collar jobs, right? There was always the fear that somehow the robots will come and they will replace the factory worker, they will replace the waiter, the farmer, and it never happened actually. I mean, in all cases, even when you have the robot, there are also people that can kind of like supervise the robot, they control what the robot does, and in AI, I think you will see something similar. You will see maybe, I mean, this happens with me and I think with many other people. I have to write a lot of things. This is part of my job, right? I have to write papers, I have to write proposals, I have to write reports and letters to the government and so on. And my personal story is that sometimes I get writer's block. I don't know how to start, right? I know that I have to write this 20 pages document, but I cannot start. And ChatGPT really helps me because I basically now go and say, okay, I will give you these 10 bullet points, which are my main ideas, and based on these 10 ideas, give me the first 3 pages, right? If I have the first 3 pages, then I can work on them. That's not my final document, right, of course, but you get rid of your writer's block because you have that starting point. That's only my personal experience. But.
Can I add something to that? So I think this brings up an interesting point, that it's up to us how we end up using the technology. My late father used to say, if you can describe what your problem is in sufficient detail, you can already solve it. And now we have the tools to do that. If you give the right prompt, properly worded, sufficient detail, we have now AI tools that can help you. But it's important to realize that we need to know what we are looking for in the answer before we start using the tools. Otherwise, if we just blindly trust them, goes back to the point that Jahna made, blindly trust what we get back without any critical review of what we get back, then it's on us if we get fooled by the responses.
What about bias and misinformation that comes from, if the data that we feed AI is wrong or biased, then also the results would be similar? Then how do we combat that? How can we make sure that we don't have this issue? Can we filter the biased data?
Well, I can have a go at this one. This is a very difficult problem, and I don't believe that you can debias AI, personally. You're very right when you say that a lot of the problem stems from the data, but not only, right? It can be the data, the algorithm, the user, third-party influences. So it's a very difficult problem. Another thing is that there's now a very mature area of computer science research called fair ML, fair machine learning, in which they come up with ways of pre-processing, post-processing data rebound, anyway, all sorts of technical techniques for what we like to call fairness management. So just like, you know, when you're dealing with certain diseases, it's a process of managing. It's not a process of getting rid of it all of a sudden, right? Or maybe not at all. Yeah. Also, I come back to the human, right? It's also up to us to provide oversight of these algorithms and tools.
Just a point on the terminology of the word bias. In everyday life, bias has a negative connotation. In machine learning, bias is what you need to have to learn. I mean, the term actually learning bias is a precondition for learning. Machine learning is all about finding the structure that exists because the data is biased. We might not like the bias in the data, but machine learning requires bias to even learn something. So yeah, just the notate on the
okay, that's an interesting. It's an interesting point. We have 2 more questions, and we are a bit tight on time, but we'll try to engage the audience if you have questions. So regulation is one of the answers about artificial intelligence, and we see that there are different approaches globally on this. We see China that has a state-driven approach, the US that has a market-driven approach, and then the EU that has a more human-centering approach. Each of these approaches has different criticisms. What is the right way to balance fostering innovation and allowing AI to flourish, but also to address social concerns about what we have already discussed? Can the two be balanced? Who can go first? Constantine?
It's a really hard problem, and what I really worry about is regulation that will slow down innovation. I have seen how sometimes, you know, you have these committees of people that maybe know just a little bit about the technology, but they start basically producing regulation after regulation after regulation. And of course, that will be very bad for innovation. And Europe has a history of doing that. I come from the US, where things are definitely more, let's build this first and then worry about it, which of course is also problematic, but at least it helps innovation flourish. I admit that that's my own personal bias. I think it's good to have the mechanisms to intervene, right? When some companies, they start producing things that are potentially dangerous. But I would worry about an excessive level of regulation, especially at this point where this technology is still a baby. You need to let the baby grow a little bit before you start, you know, controlling the baby.
Yeah, I wish it is the case actually that in the research community, the community of folks who do research on social and ethical issues in technology, you do hear a lot of negative voices. And I mean, innovation is a social issue as well, right? I mean, this is really important for us as Cyprus to find a way to fit into what's going on. And I mean, we cannot be an economy based primarily on tourism while everyone else is benefiting from this. So I don't have any easy answers for you, Niki, but yeah, I think there needs to be more dialogue, and I wish that the folks who work on ethical and social issues would come to recognize that innovation actually is a social issue as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is room for regulation, but at a later stage in the process. So I think we should let people innovate, but before we allow these technologies to be deployed in our societies, we need to make sure that we certify the technologies. So it's like a thing of the drug industry where different companies develop new medicine, but then they have to prove through an agreed upon process that it's safe to actually give these drugs to humans for human consumption, for human cure. So we might as well allow new ideas to come to the foreground, but if the governments want to allow these technologies to actually be used, then there should be very strict criteria for regulating that. And because not everything can be caught through regulation, education, again, is a key to have in mind, because we need to be aware for ourselves whether something is appropriate for us and our children. Yeah.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes.
I don't know if it's, I'm getting older, but I keep thinking there are a lot of parallels to the banking industry and some of the crises that we've seen throughout time in the banking industry. And then, there was a lot of talk about financial literacy. Maybe this is also the American coming out in me, but you can't trust the government to do everything, right? Nor should the government intervene on everything. You don't want to have over-regulation. It will probably end up hurting small businesses, right? We need to be smart consumers, is what I want to say. You can't just wait for the government to protect you from everything. That's just reality. If anyone tells you that, they're probably selling you something.
Anyone else? Nope. So the next question is based on what you previously said, Jahna. So we see a lot of attempts currently to regulate artificial intelligence, but some countries have taken a more decisive approach. For example, Italy has banned OpenAI's ChatGPT because they have privacy concerns. On a national level in Cyprus, what do you think that we could do, or should we, or could we have a more decisive approach? Similar to the previous question, should we be at the forefront of innovation? Should we allow it to flourish and not put barriers? Or should we address, similarly to Italy, the privacy concerns and be more human-centric? I mean, I see that there is not, you're more positive about artificial intelligence, so I am assuming, I can assume your answer, but go ahead.
Well, I'm not a policymaker, right? I'm a scientist, but I think that we would do well to look at the national level to strategies like that of Finland. So if I'm not mistaken, Finland has more or less taken the position that, we're a relatively small country. Clearly, we're not going to go out and in terms of AI development, compete with the United States or China. But what we can do well is educate our people to the point where we are the smartest consumers of AI in the world. And, we can make our country, at the national level, we can take advantage of it. And I don't know, I think we would do well to consider that.
Yeah, so as a counterpoint, beyond education, there is something to be said about actually pushing forward with innovation in Cyprus. And there is a good argument to be made that technology is not value neutral, right? Anyone that develops technologies, imputes their values in the technology. So we might as well develop technologies that reflect our own values as a society, as a country, as Europe. Develop our own technologies rather than just sitting around and waiting for technologies from others to come that would include their own values in them.
Yeah, so I think I agree with Loizos, and Cyprus is very well positioned right now in terms of this revolution of AI. Let me explain why. There are several research centers in the island. There is CYENS, there is CaSToRC, there is, of course, Cyprus Institute where I work at. There are several others, right, with all of them having some activity in AI, data science, machine learning. So there is a lot of research activity in this space. There is funding. There is a growing mentality among young people that we want to do something, innovative. Let's not just repeat the same jobs that, our parents and grandparents were doing. And this industry doesn't require a huge, investment. Of course, if you want to train a foundation model like GPT, right, you need a few million dollars or more. But what you can do is sometimes start with an existing model that is pre-trained and kind of fine-tune it for specific applications, which is not very expensive. So I think it's an industry where if you have good ideas, good people, you can, do things, innovative things, profitable things, easily. So yeah, I'm optimistic about Cyprus if things move that way. Yeah.
By the way, I'm also optimistic, and I don't find your points to be at all counter to what I was saying. I guess maybe I totally agree that you can build innovative products and services and not do foundation models, sure. I guess what I do want to say, though, is that in the long run, I think we need a long-term strategy where the quote-unquote average citizen knows about these things. I think that will limit us if we don't start taking that point more seriously.
Absolutely.
These are the questions I prepared, but if the audience has questions or concerns they want to raise, feel free. Chiara.
Thank you so much. I'll speak loudly.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I was learning and making lots of grimaces at all of you. I work with politicians, and there is a concerned skepticism that you must have heard thousands of other times, but I just want to reiterate it. The pace of regulation. I think I'm pretty loud though, but the pace of regulation and how fast, policymakers can catch up to their understanding of what is going on is extremely slow. So it worries me when Constantine, you say, we've seen this so many times at the European level, these committees are set up by people who don't know enough, and all they do is block, block, block. But my concern is, well, we shouldn't be trying to avoid those as a solution. We should try to think, how do we work with them, right? Because when I hear sort of the notions of we need to be more responsible citizens, to me it feels a bit like a governance cop-out, because ultimately that is moving the burden onto individuals, and it's mainly sounding more like an ethical, moral stance than something that we're going to do inside society to nudge us towards the right behaviors. So I agree about the education, but I just wanted to, let's not leave behind people with you should educate yourself or you should be responsible. There is a role in governance here, and I think let's not underestimate how slowly, we have to start now for them to be able to regulate something 20 years down the line, not wait for the genie to get out of the box and then say, whoops, like we have also done with various Facebooks and whatnot, and now we don't know how to undo the damage. That's, sorry, just my opinion.
No, we welcome different opinions. Everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for an insightful panel. But I think, thank you, Niki. I'm trying to pull my thoughts together because I think we should recognize, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I obviously yield to you. We have not recognized that AI is like a technology and innovation, fourth revolution, like no other. We have innovated, go through history, telegrams, first industrial revolution, second industrial revolution, printing presses, etc., but they were all human-made and human-regulated, and humans stopped it and humans took decisions. Nuclear weapons, it was a human that decided to throw the nuclear bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. AI, the way I understand it, I stand corrected, it's not only what it is programmed, but it learns by itself. And it decides by itself. And that's scary, because for me, language is the basis of civilization and the basis of humanity. So you have somebody that have actually tapped on the human DNA, and we do not know which direction it is going. I mean, all these Googles and Microsofts follow the money. They're making billions. So they have every reason for this thing to go forward. Regulated? How do you regulate something like this that in terms of AI time, a year, it's a month? You got to be ahead of the curve. And how are you ahead of the curve? Which is a huge challenge. And what scares me is that humanity I'm not trying to be a fearmonger, humanity will simply lose control. I mean, it's good for the education, as you say, there are some positive things, but you know what? I also would like to think, to exercise critical thinking. When everything is like that, it says, you know, it was said to me by Google, it was said to me by ChatGPT. Where is your cross-references? Think, don't just regurgitate. And all these things have applications. Even you have the godfather of AI like Hinton, Elon Musk, and as you know better than I do, that famous letter that they said, listen guys, stop it. Push the pause button because we are unleashing a beast and we don't know which way it's going to go. Now, the same AI that drives the autonomous vehicle in the street, it is the same AI that drives tanks. And it is the same AI that will decide by itself which targets to kill. Now, I think we're losing, and it permeates everything in life. As you said, education, health, the way we think, the way we act. Language is a most sacred thing. I mean, civilization evolved through language, our mythology, our religion, our literature, our poems. Now all these things are being done by, Harari would say, aliens. Aliens not coming from Mars, but human aliens. And artificial intelligence, could it be hashtag alien intelligence? Because we will not have control. I do not know. I'm just throwing it on the table. So help me out with my own thinking because it can be sometimes convoluted. Thank you, Niki. And I'm sorry for being a blabbermouth.
I want to comment on the push the pause button. We cannot push the pause button. Okay, let's start with that. Even if all legal entities or companies that produce AI are forced to stop, the technology is already out there. Someone rogue can continue building AI. So it's not, I don't think it's a matter of stopping innovation or stopping going forward. We cannot stop that. The best thing we can do is how to cope with the oncoming wave of AI. And we are not saying that the government doesn't have a role or a responsibility, but it's the responsibility of the government. I really don't understand why 1 month from today we cannot start teaching in our schools to be critical thinkers. Like, let's stop doing this course 5 times a week. Let's do it 4 times a week and spend this extra hour on becoming critical thinkers. I don't think it's a lot of work. I don't think it's a lot of, you know, it doesn't require laws to be passed or discussions to be held. It's a common sense kind of thing to start thinking critically from a young age. It's not just for the parent to teach their children, it's also for the government through the educational system to teach the citizens to become critical thinkers, because exactly we cannot stop this wave. We need to be ready to cope with it. I don't want to be pessimistic, I'm just trying to say that we cannot expect things from others, we need to see what we can do for ourselves.
Let me say something that may sound a bit controversial. I mean, I agree with maybe 95% of what you said, but that last 5% I think may be important. The first aspect of it is that, I mean, humans do not have a very good track record either, right? And if we think about humans in terms of decision makers, you know, operators of other technologies such as cars, and I mean, we are terrible in many aspects, right? And we, you know, fight with each other, we kill each other, when we operate transportation vehicles, we cause, you know, disaster. And I'm optimistic that AI will be better than us and that we will enjoy the benefits of that. So that's half of the story. The other half is in your thought process, which again, I completely agree with up to a certain point. The part where I don't agree with you is, I think you're saying, okay, AI can do all of these things, and so we will release control. We will let it decide things by itself, right? We don't have to do that. That last step, I mean, in the same way that we built nuclear reactors, but then we have a whole bunch of control mechanisms to safeguard the reactor, and we have human operators that are on top of all the control systems, right? I mean, why are we going to build AI and let it go wild? That part of your thought process, I think I disagree with.
May I come back? I'm sorry, because AI is totally different. Nuclear weapons, you have a watchdog, you have an atomic international agency, you have an NPT, they're there. This one, your own inventors, as you said at the very beginning, do not know where it's going. So how do I keep, how do I keep control? Because companies like OpenAI and I don't know what else is it, we are going to be super intelligent. They're going to be doing things better than humans in a democracy, okay? Because it could be obviously a tool to suppress people. Think of the dark side of it. That's what I'm saying. And if we can get our act together possibly at the international level, possibly, then yeah, as you said, the different ideas. China has different ideas. The European Union has a different idea. There is a draft treaty that is already on the table in the Council of Europe. But those things immediately become yesterday story because they are not up to date. I'm sorry, I don't want to take it.
No.
I should shut up.
No, it's good to hear different opinions. I mean, yeah, there are concerns about surveillance, about face recognition that are being used in different countries. So that's part of the regulation, stopping predictive algorithms or banning face recognition from public places, because you can be recognized by your face wherever you are in public. So that's part of the regulation that also Jahna mentioned before, that it's interdisciplinary, so you have to work with lawyers, you have to work with sociologists, you have to work with people who understand the technology better than me or someone else. Do we have more questions?
I have a quick comeback.
Okay.
Sorry, we're going to be just the annoying ones. Yeah, it's fine. Because education is that panacea that we sprinkle over every problem we don't have a solution for. And that sort of aggravates me, because I believe in education as much as you. It's the first solution I say. But have we been doing better in educating our societies? Let's look at, we're more polarized than ever. We haven't really done much in terms of fake news. And now we're putting that same solution. And I think it's just a little bit too optimistic. That's all. Sorry.
I don't think it's education that has a problem. It's the curriculum in education that is the problem. We have the same curriculum that we had like 2 centuries ago, when the schools were supposed to produce factory workers, and we never got out of the mentality of, memorize this thing because you need to fix the tool when it breaks. I mean, our educational system is still producing factory workers in the modern sense, instead of producing critically thinking individuals with social skills, with the ability to argue and discuss and reach consensus. I think we need to rethink what education is. And it's not the education the problem, it's what we teach our kids, I think. Yeah.
It's been 20 years that we say it, and it's never taken seriously politically. So we need to also think about other backstops if that one's not going to stick. Thank you.
Okay. No? Okay. To conclude, we have a very optimistic panel. I mean, it's good to hear that, if we use technology right, we can have positive outcomes, of course. We also have the other concerns, and it makes sense. It's a very difficult subject to navigate, and it's still developing, so it's difficult to have one. We were not expecting to have one definitive conclusion. We were trying to have a discussion, so I mean, that's it from us. Anyone else? Any concluding remarks?
I just want to say it's a very exciting time too. I mean, there are concerns, but it's extremely exciting to live at a time period like this, because to me at least it feels like, and I'm 50 years old, right? I'm not 20. So it feels like something amazing is happening in the last couple of years, and we will see even more amazing things in the next 5 years. So I think it's It's a great time to be alive.
And on that note, we're ending. Okay, if you have any questions, we can take them outside as well. And I think there's also a choir at the Home for Cooperation if you are interested in joining.